The Afghan sun beat down mercilessly on Guard Tower 7 as Staff Sergeant Maya Torres wiped sweat from her brow and pressed her eye against the rifle scope once more. Nothing. Just endless stretches of tan desert, jagged mountain ridges in the distance, and the occasional dust devil dancing across the wasteland. It was 1400 hours, 2 more hours until her shift ended. 2 more hours of absolutely nothing. She shifted her weight, feeling the metal platform beneath her boots radiate heat like a griddle. 8 months. 8 months of this same view, this same routine, this same crushing monotony. Below, in the motor pool of Forward Operating Base Sentinel, her former squad loaded gear into Humvees, preparing for a reconnaissance mission into the Coast Province. Real action, real purpose, real combat. Maya's jaw clenched as she watched Lieutenant Davis brief the team. 6 months ago, she'd led missions like that. Her tactical assessments had been praised by command. Her marksmanship scores were the highest in the battalion, 98% accuracy at ranges exceeding 800 meters. She'd saved 3 lives during an ambush in Kandahar on her first tour and received a commendation for her performance under fire on her second. And now she was a glorified scarecrow in a tower. "Hey, Tower 7, you still awake up there?" The radio crackled with Corporal Mike Henderson's voice, dripping with amusement. Maya keyed her mic. "Eyes on, Henderson. Someone has to actually work around here." Laughter echoed through the radio. Yeah, don't strain yourself watching all that action. I'd hate for you to get bored." She bit back a sharp response. Henderson meant no real harm. He was just another soldier killing time, but the joke stung because it was true. Bored didn't begin to cover it. She was wasting away, her skills deteriorating with each uneventful shift. The convoy engines roared to life below. Maya watched through her scope as Lieutenant Davis climbed into the lead vehicle. She'd requested, again, to join this mission 3 days ago. His response had been the same as always. "We need you here, Torres. You're our best overwatch. Too valuable to risk in the field." Valuable. The word was a cage wrapped in a compliment. Maya knew the real reason. She'd overheard Colonel Brennan talking to the XO last month. "Torres is solid, but these village operations get messy. Hand-to-hand, close quarters. I need her where her skills matter most. She's perfect for guard duty, patient, detail-oriented, reliable. Why fix what isn't broken?" Why fix what isn't broken? Because she was breaking bit by bit, shift by shift. The convoy kicked up massive dust clouds as it rolled through the main gate, heading north toward actual combat. Maya tracked them through her scope until they disappeared into the haze. The base suddenly felt even more empty. Most of the 2nd Battalion had deployed on a major offensive operation 40 miles north, hunting a high-value target who'd been coordinating attacks throughout the region. FOB Sentinel was running on a skeleton crew, 37 personnel, mostly support staff, medics, and comms specialists, and 1 overqualified sniper stuck in a tower. Maya resumed her scan pattern: north, northeast, east, southeast, methodical sectors sweeping the horizon. It was the same pattern she'd run 6,000 times before. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory guiding the rifle while her mind wandered. She thought about her father, Sergeant Major Daniel Torres, who'd served 3 tours in Iraq. He taught her to shoot when she was 12, instilling discipline and precision with every trigger pull. "Shooting isn't about strength, Mija," he'd said. "It's about patience, breathing, becoming one with the weapon. You've got the gift." That gift had earned her top honors at sniper school. It had earned her respect from instructors who initially doubted a woman could handle the physical and mental demands. It had earned her a reputation as one of the finest marksmen in her class. And now it earned her 12-hour shifts staring at sand. "Tower 7, this is command. Radio check." The voice of Sergeant First Class Morrison, the current watch commander, broke through her thoughts. "Tower 7, loud and clear." "Any activity?" Maya scanned once more, a formality. "Negative, all quiet." "Copy that, stay sharp." "Stay sharp." as if there was anything to be sharp for. But then something caught her eye. A glint brief, maybe 800 meters out on the ridgeline to the northeast, sunlight reflecting off. What? Glass? Metal? She adjusted her scope, zooming in on the location. Nothing now, just rocks and scrub brush. Probably nothing. Vehicle windshield from the valley beyond, or local herders with a metal water container. Still, she marked it in her log. 14:27 hours, possible reflection, northeast ridge, grid 42, SRC 847-392. The glint didn't return. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Maya felt the familiar weight of frustration settle over her shoulders. Another day done. Another day wasted. Tomorrow would bring another shift, another empty horizon, another reminder that despite all her training and proven ability, she was just a guard post sniper. Little did she know, less than 12 hours from now, that would change forever. As darkness crept across the desert and the temperature finally dropped from scorching to merely hot, Maya climbed down from Tower 7. Her replacement, Private Chen, nodded as they passed. "Anything exciting?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Same as always," Maya replied, heading toward the barracks. "Whole lot of nothing." She didn't mention the glint, probably wasn't worth mentioning anyway. Behind her, Tower 7 stood silent against the star-filled Afghan sky, waiting. The moment of truth was coming, rushing toward them through the darkness like a freight train. But for now, Maya Torres was just another overlooked soldier, heading to another restless sleep, dreaming of a war that seemed determined to pass her by. If only she knew that war was about to come knocking, Maya couldn't shake the feeling. 3 days had passed since that brief glint on the ridgeline, and the uneasy sensation in her gut had only intensified. It wasn't just one thing. It was a pattern, subtle but undeniable to someone who'd spent 8 months studying every grain of sand around Fob Sentinel. She stood in Lieutenant Davis's office, tablet in hand, displaying her logged observations. The lieutenant sat behind his desk, fingers drumming impatiently on a stack of deployment orders. 17 anomalies in 72 hours, sir, Maya said, swiping through her documentation. Vehicle tracks appearing overnight on the eastern approach, fresh ones. Sun reflections from the northeast ridge at inconsistent times. Disturbed Earth near grid sectors that were untouched last week. And yesterday, I spotted what looked like a surveying position on the southern hilltop. Davis glanced at the screen, then back to his paperwork. "Tours, we get local traffic through this area constantly. Herders, traders, families moving between villages. These hills have been inhabited for thousands of years. Sir, I've cataloged normal traffic patterns for 8 months. This isn't normal." Maya pulled up a comparison chart. "Look, regular local movement happens on established routes during daylight following predictable schedules. These tracks, they appear at night, approach our perimeter, then loop back. That's reconnaissance. Or it's smugglers avoiding our patrols." Davis leaned back in his chair, sighing. "I appreciate your vigilance, Staff Sergeant, but intelligence hasn't flagged any elevated threats in this sector. The real action is up north where our combat teams are engaged. This," he gestured vaguely toward the window, "this is quiet country. That's why we're running minimal personnel." Maya's jaw tightened. "That's exactly my point, sir. We're vulnerable if someone's been watching." If, Davis's tone sharpened. "I can't request additional resources or change our alert posture based on tire tracks and sun glints. I need concrete intelligence, intercepted communications, confirmed hostile presence, something actionable. By the time we have that, it might be too late." "That's enough." Davis stood, softening his expression slightly. "Look, I know guard duty is frustrating. I know you want to be out there with the teams, but I need you focused on real threats, not phantom ones. Log your observations, follow protocol, but don't let paranoia cloud your judgment. Understood?" Maya stood at attention, Yes, sir. Dismissed. She left the office, frustration burning in her chest. Davis wasn't a bad officer. He was just overworked, understaffed, and focused on the confirmed threat 40 miles north. But Maya's instincts screamed that he was wrong. Back in the communications center, she found Private First Class Tommy Jackson hunched over 3 different monitors, headset askew on his dark hair. At 19, Jackson was the youngest specialist at FOB Sentinel, a tech prodigy who'd enlisted after 2 years of computer science at MIT. Most soldiers treated him like the base IT guy. Maya had discovered he was much more than that. "Tell me you found something," she said quietly, pulling up a chair. Jackson's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Maybe. I pulled satellite imagery from the past week, had to call in a favor from a buddy at Regional Command." He brought up a series of overhead images. "Look here and here. See these heat signatures." Maya leaned closer. Faint thermal readings appeared on the images, clustered in patterns around the base perimeter. "These could be animals," Jackson continued, "but the movement patterns are wrong. Animals don't conduct systematic perimeter surveys. And check this out." He overlaid her logged anomalies onto the satellite images. They matched perfectly. "Your ground observations align with overhead thermal activity. Something's definitely moving out there and it's coordinated. Can you send this to intelligence?" "Already did, 40 minutes ago." Jackson's expression darkened. "Got a response 10 minutes later. They said thermal signatures are inconclusive, probably local wildlife or civilians, and without corroborating signals intelligence, it's not worth escalating." "Of course they did." Maya rubbed her temples. The machine required proof, evidence, certainty, but combat didn't wait for perfect information. "There's something else," Jackson said, lowering his voice. "The convoy that left yesterday, I've been monitoring their comms. They hit heavy resistance 6 hours into the mission. 3 wounded, 1 critical. They're calling for medevac and reinforcements." Maya's stomach dropped. "How many additional personnel are they pulling from here?" "Colonel Brennan authorized a quick reaction force, 12 soldiers leaving in 2 hours. That drops us to 25 active personnel. 25 tours to defend an entire forward operating base." The math was terrifying. A standard FOB required minimum 60 personnel for adequate security. They'd already been running lean at 37. Now they'd be down to 25, most of whom were support staff, medics, cooks, communications specialists, mechanics, combat-trained soldiers, maybe 10. Maybe. "We're sitting ducks," Maya whispered. "Yeah," Jackson met her eyes. "I believe you, by the way, about something being wrong. I've seen enough data to know when patterns are coincidental and when they're not. This is deliberate." "Then we prepare." "For what? We can't change the deployment orders. Command's focused on the northern offensive." Maya stood, decision crystallizing. "We can't stop the drawdown, but we can be ready. I need you to do something for me. Keep monitoring those thermal signatures. Log everything. If they move, I want to know immediately. I'm supposed to end my shift in 20 minutes. "Jackson." Her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I don't know when it's coming, but something is. And when it does, communications might be the only thing keeping us alive. I need you sharp and ready." The young private studied her face, seeing something there that made him nod slowly. "Okay, I'll pull a double shift. Coffee and energy drinks. I'm good for another 12 hours minimum." "Thank you." As Maya headed toward the armory to inspect her equipment, the sun was setting again, painting the Afghan sky in deep purples and reds. Beautiful and ominous. Around the base, soldiers prepared for another quiet night, checking perimeters, running routine patrols, settling into the comfortable assumption that nothing would happen. But Maya Torres knew better. She could feel it in her bones, that predatory awareness that had kept her alive through 2 tours. The enemy was out there, watching, waiting, counting soldiers as they departed, measuring vulnerabilities, planning. That evening she returned to Tower 7 for a voluntary extra shift. As darkness swallowed the desert, she methodically checked her rifle, cleaning, loading, zeroing the scope. She inventoried her ammunition. 8 magazines, 240 rounds total, more than enough for a normal shift. Somehow, she suspected it wouldn't be enough. At 200 hours, Jackson's voice crackled through her radio. Tower 7, I've got movement. Multiple thermal signatures, northeast and southeast sectors, approximately 1 kilometer out. Maya's pulse quickened. How many? Hard to say, at least 15, maybe more there. Tors, they're moving toward the base. She scanned through her scope, switching to thermal imaging. There, heat signatures, human-shaped, advancing in tactical formations. Command needs to know. I already tried. Davis said it's probably a nomadic group setting up camp. He's not authorizing a heightened alert posture without visual confirmation of hostile intent. Maya's hands tightened on her rifle. Every instinct screamed danger, but protocol demanded she wait for confirmation. Wait for the enemy to reveal themselves. She wouldn't have to wait long. The moment of truth was 4 hours away, rushing toward them through the darkness like a storm. And Maya Tors would be ready. The pre-dawn air was cold enough to see your breath, a brief respite before the Afghan sun turned the world into an oven. Maya stood near the motor pool, watching the quick reaction force load equipment into their vehicles. 12 more soldiers about to leave. 12 more defenders stripped from an already skeletal garrison. Colonel Brennan moved among the troops, his weathered face set in grim determination. The firefight up north had intensified. What was supposed to be a quick strike had turned into a sustained engagement. American forces were winning, but the cost was mounting. They needed reinforcements, and they needed them now. Tors, the colonel's voice cut through the morning bustle. Your senior NCO once this team deploys. I need you maintaining vigilance on those guard posts. Yes, sir. Maya hesitated, then pushed forward. Sir, about my reports from the past 3 days. I read them. Brennan's tone wasn't dismissive, just exhausted. Under normal circumstances, I'd take them more seriously. But right now, I have 11 wounded soldiers 40 miles north who need help. That's my immediate crisis. You keep watching those hills. Anything concrete develops, you alert Lieutenant Davis immediately. Understood. Understood, sir. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But arguing with a colonel during a crisis deployment was career suicide and, more importantly, wouldn't change anything. As the convoy prepared to depart, a lean figure approached Maya, Sergeant First Class Robert Chen, a legendary sniper from the 3rd Ranger Battalion, temporarily attached to the QRF as an advisor. At 42, Chen had more confirmed kills than anyone Maya had ever met, and a reputation for reading battlefields like other people read books. Staff Sergeant Tors, Chen extended his hand. Heard you're the best overwatch this base has. I do my job, Sergeant. Maya shook his hand, surprised by the compliment. More than that, I think. Chen pulled out a tablet showing her logged reports. I review all intelligence before deployments. Your observations over the past 72 hours, that's quality fieldcraft. Most soldiers see what they expect to see. You're seeing what's actually there. Finally, someone who understood. You think I'm right, that something's building out there. Chen studied the eastern ridgeline, eyes narrowed. In Fallujah 2004, I had a feeling like this. 3 days of little things, wrong things. Nobody listened. Then 50 insurgents hit our checkpoint at dawn. He turned back to her. We held, but barely. Lost 4 good soldiers because we weren't prepared for what our instincts already knew was coming. What did you do? After that, I learned to trust the itch between my shoulder blades, the one you've got right now. He pulled out a range card, detailed topographical markings covering it. You know your sectors. Every inch. 8 months of memorizing firing lanes, dead zones, approach routes. Good, because here's what I learned the hard way. When everything falls apart, when communications fail and plans evaporate, the difference between living and dying is knowing your ground better than the enemy knows theirs. Chen marked several points on the card. These positions, if I were planning an assault on this base, these are my staging areas. You watch them closer than anything else. Maya studied the marks. They aligned perfectly with her anomalous observations. "How long have you been stuck on guard duty?" Chen asked. 8 months. 8 months of studying the same terrain. Most snipers would go crazy with boredom. But you, he smiled grimly. You've been preparing even if you didn't know it. Every shift, every scan, every logged observation. You've been building a mental map that's worth more than 100 combat deployments when defending this ground. Doesn't feel that way. Feels like I'm being sidelined. I thought that too once. Had a co who kept me on Overwatch instead of assault teams. Drove me crazy. Chen checked his watch 10 minutes until departure. Then one day, he told me something I didn't understand until years later. The glory goes to those who charge forward, but battles are won by those who see everything and refuse to break. You understand what that means? Maya shook her head. It means when the chaos comes, and it always comes, everyone will be reacting, panicking, scrambling. But you'll already know the battlefield. You'll see patterns they can't see. You'll make shots they can't make. Not because you're better trained, but because you've been patient enough to learn what patience teaches. The convoy engines roared to life. Chen adjusted his pack, preparing to board. "One more thing," he said, his voice dropping low enough that only Maya could hear. "The difference between a good sniper and a legend isn't skill. It's what you do when everything falls apart. When you're out of ammunition, when you're wounded, when every logical voice says retreat. Legends find a way to hold the line anyway." He climbed into the Humvee, leaving Maya standing in the dust. The convoy rolled through the main gate at 6:15 hours. Maya counted them out, 12 soldiers, 3 vehicles disappearing into the desert haze. The base suddenly felt cavernous and empty. 25 personnel remained. She did a mental inventory. Lieutenant Davis, infantry, capable but skeptical of her warnings. Corporal Henderson and 4 other combat-trained soldiers, perimeter security. Private Jackson, communications. 8 medics and support staff. 6 mechanics and logistics personnel. 4 cooks and administrative soldiers. Against a real assault, they'd last minutes. Maya spent the day obsessively preparing. She cleaned her M110 rifle until it gleamed, checked every mechanical component, loaded 8 magazines with match-grade ammunition. She reviewed range cards, memorized wind patterns, calculated bullet drop for every significant distance marker around the base. Jackson sent her updates throughout the day, thermal signatures still hovering at the perimeter, never approaching close enough to warrant engagement, never retreating far enough to suggest departure. They were waiting for something. Nightfall came at 18:47 hours. Maya climbed Tower 7 for her evening shift, though it wasn't officially assigned. Private Morrison, scheduled for this post, didn't argue when she volunteered to take it. "You okay, Tors?" Morrison asked. "You've been wound tight all day." "Just restless. Go get some sleep." "Your funeral, 12-hour voluntary shift. You're crazier than I thought." As darkness swallowed the desert, Maya settled into her position. The temperature plummeted, stars emerging in spectacular clarity across the Afghan sky, beautiful and indifferent. She wrapped her shemagh around her neck against the cold, eyes never leaving the scope. At 2300 hours, Jackson radioed. "Thermal signatures have stopped moving. They're stationary, about 800 meters out, multiple positions." "Waiting for something," Maya murmured. "Or waiting for us to sleep." She thought about Chen's words, what you do when everything falls apart. The night stretched ahead, quiet except for the wind whistling through the tower's metal framework. Below, the base settled into minimal overnight operations. A few lights, rotating guards, most personnel sleeping. Maya checked her rifle one more time. 240 rounds. It would have to be enough. She didn't know that in 4 hours she'd burned through most of that ammunition. Didn't know she'd be fighting for her life and the lives of everyone sleeping peacefully below. Didn't know this would be the longest night of her existence. But somewhere deep in her gut, beneath conscious thought, she knew the wait was almost over. The moment of truth was coming. And when it arrived at 3:47 hours with fire and thunder, Maya Torres would discover exactly what kind of soldier she really was. 0347 hours. Maya's eyes burned from hours of staring through the scope, but she blinked away the fatigue and continued her methodical scan. Northeast sector, east sector, southeast. A flash of heat signature, then another, then 12 more, all moving simultaneously. Contact, Maya's voice cut through the radio silence. Multiple hostiles, all sectors, 800 meters and closing. The world exploded. 3 massive detonations ripped through the perimeter fence on the eastern side, the concussive waves hitting Maya's tower like a physical blow. The metal framework shuddered violently. Her scope went white with the flash, temporarily blinding her night vision. All personnel, this is Tower 7. We are under attack. I repeat, base is under attack. Maya's training took over, voice steady despite her racing heart. She blinked hard, clearing her vision, and acquired her first target, a figure running through the breach in the fence. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. The figure dropped. One down, 40 more appeared behind him. Tracer rounds lit up the darkness like deadly fireflies, crisscrossing the compound from multiple directions. This wasn't a probe or a harassment attack. This was a full-scale assault, coordinated and planned with precision. They'd been watching, waiting for exactly this moment, when the base was stripped of its defenders. Tower 7, how many hostiles? Lieutenant Davis's voice cracked through the radio, thick with sleep and shock. At least 40, sir, probably more. Maya fired again, dropping an insurgent carrying an RPG. They're hitting us from 3 sides, east, northeast, and southeast. Coordinated assault pattern. Another explosion, this one inside the compound. The communications building. Maya's stomach clenched. Jackson, do you copy? She fired twice more between radio calls. 2 more hostiles down. Static then. I'm here, I'm okay, but primary comms are down. They hit the antenna array, switching to backup, but were degraded. Of course they hit communications first. These weren't random fighters. This was a trained assault force. Through her scope, Maya identified the pattern. The enemy wasn't charging blindly. They were using fire and movement tactics, one group providing cover while another advanced. Professional, deadly. She targeted the machine gunner providing covering fire from the eastern breach. Deep breath, slow exhale, gentle squeeze. The gunner spun and collapsed. His teammates faltered, confused by the loss of suppressive fire. Maya exploited the hesitation, dropping 2 more before they could reorganize. All defensive positions, concentrate fire on eastern breach, Davis ordered. Henderson, get your team to the motor pool. Don't let them reach the vehicles. Below, Maya saw Corporal Henderson and 3 soldiers sprinting across the compound, weapons blazing. They took position behind concrete barriers, engaging targets pouring through the gap in the fence. But they were outnumbered 5-1. Maya shifted her fire to support them, methodically picking off insurgents who tried to flank Henderson's position. Her world narrowed to a cycle. Acquire target, breathe, squeeze, confirm kill, acquire next target. The rifle became an extension of her will, each shot precisely calculated. An RPG streaked across the compound, slamming into the mess hall. The building erupted in flames, lighting up the night. In the hellish glow, Maya could see the full scope of the assault, easily 50 attackers, possibly more in the darkness beyond. Tower 7, northeast sector. Jackson's voice urgent. 10 hostiles moving on the medical station. Maya pivoted, finding the group through her scope. The medical station, where 12 wounded from previous patrols were recovering, unable to fight, if the enemy reached them. She fired rapidly, not her usual careful pace. The first insurgent fell, then the second. The third stumbled but kept moving. She adjusted for his movement, led the shot, fired. He went down hard. But they were too many, moving too fast. 7 remaining fighters were almost at the medical station door. Henderson, Northeast Medical Station, 7 hostiles. Maya emptied her magazine into the group, dropping 3 more, but the remaining 4 reached the building. On it, Henderson's team redirected fire, tracers tearing into the medical station's exterior. Maya reloaded with practiced speed. 2 seconds, magazine out, fresh mag in, bolt release, back on target. Through a window, she saw muzzle flashes inside the medical station. Close quarters combat. She couldn't help them there. She had to trust Henderson's team to handle it while she controlled the larger battlefield. Tower 7, this is command. What's your ammunition status? Davis asked. Maya did quick math. She'd burned through 3 magazines in 6 minutes. 100 rounds gone. 5 mags remaining. I'm rationing shots, but sir, they keep coming. Conserve ammunition. Help is coming, but QRF is 90 minutes out minimum. 90 minutes, an eternity. Another explosion rocked the compound. The fuel depot on the western perimeter, smaller tanks secondary targets. Flames leaped 50 feet into the air. The insurgents were trying to box them in, cut off escape routes, destroy critical infrastructure. Maya spotted movement on the southern ridge, high ground, perfect position for enemy overwatch. Through her scope, she saw him, an enemy sniper, setting up a Dragunov rifle, preparing to rain hell on the defending soldiers. It was an impossible shot. 700 meters, elevated position, darkness broken only by firelight creating inconsistent shadows, wind gusting from the northwest at approximately 12 miles per hour. The target was partially concealed behind rocks. But Maya had studied these hills for 8 months. She knew the wind patterns, the bullet drop, the exact distance to that ridge. She'd logged it in her range card. Grid 42, SRC 847-392. The same position where she'd seen that glint 3 days ago. They'd been surveying firing positions. She'd been right all along. Maya made her calculations in seconds, adjusted her scope, controlled her breathing despite the chaos erupting around her. The tower shook from nearby explosions, but her hands remained steady. She saw the enemy sniper settle into position, preparing his own shot at Henderson's team. Maya fired first. Through her scope, she watched the Dragunov clatter against rocks as its owner slumped sideways. 700 meters, 1 shot, perfect. Enemy sniper down, southern ridge, she reported, already scanning for the next threat. Good kill, Tors, keep them off our backs. The battle raged for another 20 minutes, an eternity compressed into moments of crystal-clear violence. Maya fired 67 rounds during that span, each one counting, each one necessary. She identified squad leaders by their movements and eliminated them, disrupting enemy coordination. She protected friendly positions when they were about to be overrun. She called out threats that ground forces couldn't see. Her arm throbbed where shrapnel from a near-miss explosion had sliced through her uniform. Blood soaked her sleeve, but she ignored it. Pain was irrelevant. Only the mission mattered. At 4:23 hours, the attack intensified. A technical truck, a pickup with a mounted machine gun, raced through the eastern breach, its gunner spraying wild fire across the compound. Technical eastern approach, Maya shouted, engaging. She killed the gunner, but the truck kept coming, driver hunched low. She fired at the engine block, trying to disable it. Sparks flew from the hood, but it didn't stop. The technical smashed through a barrier, heading straight for the command center, where Lieutenant Davis coordinated the defense. Maya switched targets to the driver, A harder shot through the windshield, but necessary. She fired 3 rapid shots. The windshield spiderwebbed. The truck swerved violently, clipping a concrete barrier and flipping onto its side. It skidded 20 feet before stopping, fuel leaking from ruptured tanks. Henderson's team hit it with incendiary rounds. The technical exploded in a fireball. "Nice shooting, Tower 7, Henderson gasped over the radio. But Maya barely heard him. Through her scope, she'd spotted something that made her blood run cold. In the darkness beyond the flames, beyond the immediate assault force, she saw them. More heat signatures. At least 20 additional fighters holding back, waiting. This wasn't the main assault. It was just the first wave. "Command, be advised. Enemy reinforcements standing by, approximately 1 kilometer east. 20-plus hostiles." Lieutenant Davis's response was strained. "Copy that. Ammo situation is critical across all positions. We can't sustain this rate of fire." Maya checked her own ammunition. 2 magazines left, 48 rounds. The sun wouldn't rise for another 2 hours. The quick reaction force was at least 70 minutes away. They were running out of time, ammunition, and options. But as Maya pressed her eye back to the scope and found her next target, she realized something. This was exactly what Chen had meant. This was the moment when everything fell apart. And she would be damned if she'd break now. The long night had only just begun. 0445 hours. Maya's shoulder was a mass of bruises from continuous recoil. Her right hand cramped around the rifle grip. The wound on her arm had stopped bleeding but throbbed with each heartbeat. None of it mattered. The second wave hit at 5:05 hours. 20 insurgents poured through multiple breach points, forcing the defenders to split their already thin fire. Maya prioritized targets with ruthless efficiency. Anyone carrying explosives died first, then machine gunners, then squad leaders identifiable by their tactical positioning. "Tower 7, we've got movement on the western perimeter." Corporal Henderson's voice was ragged with exhaustion. 3 hostiles with satchel charges heading for the armory. Maya swung her rifle west, finding the target sprinting through shadows. The armory, if they reached it, the entire base would become a crater. She led the first runner by 2 feet, accounting for his speed and the crosswind. Fired. He tumbled forward, the satchel charge spilling from his hands. The other 2 scattered, taking cover behind a destroyed Humvee. Smart. They knew someone was watching. "Jackson, I need eyes on the western armory approach. Can you get me thermal on screen?" "Stand by." The sound of rapid typing came through the radio. "Got it. Sending to your secondary display." A small screen mounted on Maya's scope lit up with thermal imaging from the base's remaining security cameras. She saw the 2 insurgents clearly now, crouched behind the vehicle, waiting for an opportunity. Maya studied their position, calculating angles. The Humvee provided solid cover from her direct line of fire, but Chen's words echoed in her mind, knowing your ground better than the enemy knows theirs. She'd logged every vehicle position, every structure, every reflection angle in this compound. The Humvee's side mirror, she could see it in her mind, positioned at exactly the right angle. "This is insane," she muttered, then adjusted her aim. She fired at the mirror. The bullet struck the reflective surface and ricocheted at a sharp angle, catching one insurgent in the shoulder. He stumbled from cover, screaming. Maya's second shot ended the scream. His partner broke and ran. He made it 3 steps before her third shot dropped him. "How the hell did you make that shot?" Henderson sounded stunned. 8 months of starring at the same scenery. You learned the angles." Maya was already scanning for the next threat. "Status report all positions." The responses came in, painting a grim picture. Henderson's team was down to 2 men, 1 killed, 1 critically wounded. The medical station had held, but barely, with 4 insurgents dead inside and 2 medics injured in the close quarters fighting. Ammunition was at 30% across all positions. and Maya was down to her last magazine, 15 rounds. She'd fired 193 rounds in just under 2 hours, every shot necessary, every shot counted, but mathematics were unforgiving. She couldn't hold out much longer at this rate. "Jackson, tell me you've reached higher command." "Negative. The backup antenna took damage in that last mortar barrage. I'm trying to jury-rig a solution, but—" His voice cracked with frustration. "I'm a computer guy, Tors, not a miracle worker." "You've kept us connected this long. That makes you a miracle worker in my book. Keep trying." The insurgents adapted their tactics as the night wore on. They stopped charging in massed groups, instead using suppressive fire and careful movement. Whoever commanded this assault force was learning from his losses, becoming more cautious. That caution gave Maya an opportunity. At 5:47 hours, she spotted him, a figure hanging back from the fighting, using hand signals to direct other fighters. The commander. He stayed in cover, smart enough not to expose himself. But he had to communicate, and communication required visibility of his troops. Maya watched patiently, ignoring other targets, waiting for the moment she knew would come. Patience, the most important skill any sniper possessed. There, the commander moved to a new position, transitioning between cover points. 3 seconds of exposure. Maya tracked him smoothly, leading his movement. 600 meters, moderate wind. She exhaled slowly and fired. The commander crumpled mid-stride. The effect was immediate. The coordinated assault pattern fractured. Fighters began calling out to each other, confusion replacing discipline. They just lost their leadership, and everyone on that battlefield knew it. "Good kill, Tower 7, Lieutenant Davis shouted. "Their coordination is falling apart. Press the advantage." But Maya's advantage was measured in 14 remaining bullets. She made each one count over the next hour. Shots that would have been routine in training became critical decisions. Was this target worth a bullet? Could she afford to miss? She stopped taking shots beyond 700 meters, too much risk of a miss at extended range with limited ammunition. At 6:38 hours, her primary scope cracked. A bullet, she never saw where it came from, struck the top of her scope housing, spiderwebbing the lens. The scope didn't shatter completely, but her clarity was compromised, view distorted through fractured glass. "You've got to be kidding me," Maya hissed, examining the damage. The scope was still functional, barely, but precision shots were now significantly harder. She switched to backup iron sights for closer targets, reserving the damaged scope only for shots beyond 300 meters where iron sights became unreliable. It was a compromise that made every engagement more difficult. Her right arm, already wounded, began trembling from exhaustion and blood loss. Maya tied her shemagh tighter around the wound, using her teeth to pull the knot secure. The pain sharpened her focus, a reminder she was still alive, still fighting. "Tors, you need medical attention." Lieutenant Davis had clearly seen her through the command center's cameras. "Negative, I leave this tower, we lose overwatch on half the compound." Maya settled back into position. "I'm mission capable, sir." She wasn't, not really. Her vision blurred periodically from blood loss. Her hands shook. The rifle felt twice as heavy, but she was the only thing standing between the insurgents and total breakthrough. Henderson's team was pinned down. The other defensive positions were barely hanging on. Tower 7 was the linchpin, and Maya refused to abandon it. At 7:12 hours, as the first hint of dawn touched the eastern sky, Jackson's voice burst through the radio with the most beautiful words Maya had ever heard. "I've got comms. Backup antenna is functional. Patching through to regional command now." "Outstanding work, Jackson. QRF is 55 minutes out. Can we hold?" Maya looked at her ammunition. 7 rounds, 7 bullets between now and rescue. She scanned the battlefield. 18 insurgents still in the fight, though their attacks had become sporadic, disorganized. "We hold," she said firmly. "We don't have a choice." The sun climbed higher, burning off the darkness that had hidden the enemy. In daylight, their advantage evaporated. Maya could see them clearly now, exhausted fighters, battered by losses, low on ammunition themselves. But they had one final desperate gambit. At 7:28 hours, Maya spotted it through her shattered scope. A technical truck, different from the earlier one, racing from a concealed position a mile out. This one was laden with something else, drums stacked in the truck bed, wired together. A vehicle-borne IED, a massive bomb on wheels, heading straight for the command center at 60 miles per hour. Maya felt ice flood her veins. She had 6 bullets left. The truck was 800 meters out and closing fast. This was it, the moment Chen had warned her about, when everything depended on a single decision, a single shot, and refusing to break mattered more than anything else. Maya chambered her second-to-last round, reserving one final bullet for whatever came after. She had one chance to stop a truck bomb with a damaged scope, a wounded arm, and a body running on nothing but will. The longest night was about to reach its terrible climax. And Maya Torres had never been more ready. 800 meters. The technical truck barreled across the desert floor, dust plumes erupting behind it like the wake of a speedboat. Maya could see the drums in the truck bed, 50-gallon containers, at least 6 of them, wired together with det cord. Hundreds of pounds of explosives. Enough to level half the base. Her mind raced through the mathematics. The truck was moving at approximately 60 miles per hour, 88 feet per second. At current range, her bullet would take roughly 1 second to reach the target. In that second, the truck would travel 88 feet. She had to lead the shot by that distance, accounting for the vehicle's speed, the wind, and the bullet drop over 800 meters. Through her fractured scope, the truck appeared as fragmented images, like looking through a kaleidoscope. Maya blinked hard, trying to piece together a clear picture. Her right arm trembled violently. Blood had soaked through the shemagh again, dripping down her sleeve. "Torres, do you have a shot?" Lieutenant Davis's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. 750 meters. The truck showed no signs of slowing. "Working on it, sir." Maya's voice was calmer than she felt. She couldn't afford panic. Panic meant death. She had 6 bullets. 6 chances to stop a moving target through a damaged scope with a wounded shooting arm. The truck hit a bump, bouncing slightly. Maya tracked it, watching the suspension compress and extend, nodding the rhythm of the terrain, predicting movement patterns. This wasn't just about the single moment of firing. It was about reading the entire sequence, seeing 3 seconds into the future. 600 meters. Maya made a decision. She wouldn't aim for the truck's body, too much mass, too much momentum. Even if she hit it, the truck might coast into the base on sheer inertia. She needed to stop the driver. But the windshield was reinforced. She could see that much through her scope. The driver had armored his approach. Smart. He'd planned this. 500 meters. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "When you can't take the shot you want, take the shot you can make." The driver's window, smaller target angled, moving fast, but it was open. She could see the driver's arm hanging out, gripping the door frame. Why would he leave it open? Because he needed the airflow. The truck was overloaded, engine straining. He was overheating. That open window was her target. 450 meters. Maya adjusted her aim, calculating the lead distance. Through the fractured scope, she saw 3 overlapping images of the truck. She focused on the center image, trusting her training more than her compromised vision. Her arm shook. She braced it against the tower's support beam, using the metal framework to steady herself. The cold steel pressed against her wounded bicep, sending fresh waves of pain through her body. She welcomed it. Pain meant focus. 400 meters. "Torres," Davis shouted. "Quiet on comms," Maya snapped. I need to concentrate. The world narrowed. There was no base, no battle, no wounded arm or shattered scope. There was only the truck, the wind, the mathematics of death traveling at 2,800 feet per second. She controlled her breathing. Slow inhale through the nose, hold for 2 seconds. Slower exhale through the mouth. Her heart rate, spiked by adrenaline and blood loss, gradually steadied. 350 meters. Maya's finger rested on the trigger, applying 3 pounds of pressure to the 5-pound brake point. She tracked the truck smoothly, her rifle moving in sync with the vehicle's path. Lead distance, 90 feet. Windage correction, 2 moa right. Elevation, compensating for 800 meters despite the closing distance because of the extreme angle and speed. 300 meters. The truck hit a patch of rough ground. The driver fought the wheel, the vehicle fishtailing slightly before straightening out. Maya saw her opportunity. The correction had exposed more of the driver's upper body through the window. She led the shot, placing her fractured crosshairs 90 feet ahead of the truck's current position, exactly where the window would be in 1.2 seconds. 275 meters. Time seemed to slow. Maya was aware of everything, the wind shifting slightly, carrying the scent of burning fuel from the compound fires, the sound of her own heartbeat in her ears, the texture of the trigger beneath her finger, the weight of 600 souls depending on this single moment. Chen's words, legends find a way to hold the line. She exhaled halfway and held it. 250 meters. Maya squeezed the trigger with perfect, gradual pressure. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she watched the bullets trace, a visible line through the dusty air, streaking toward the intercept point she'd calculated. For one eternal second, she didn't know if she'd made the shot. Then the driver's head snapped sideways. The truck swerved violently to the left, no longer under control. It left the road, if the packed dirt could be called a road, and hit a drainage ditch at full speed. The front end dipped sharply. The vehicle became airborne, tumbling forward in a grotesque somersault. Maya tracked it through her scope, already chambering her 5th round in case she needed a follow-up shot. The truck rolled 3 times, drums breaking loose from their moorings, deck cords snapping. It came to rest on its side in a ravine 200 meters from the base perimeter. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the world turned white. The explosion was massive, a rolling fireball that climbed 300 feet into the dawn sky. The shockwave hit Tower 7 5 seconds later, a physical wall of compressed air that made the entire structure sway. Maya gripped the support beam, riding out the tremor like a sailor in a storm. When the fireball cleared, a crater 50 feet wide marked where the truck had detonated. If it had reached the base, if Maya had missed that shot, nothing would have survived within a 100-meter radius. The command center, the medical station, Henderson's position, all of it would have been obliterated. The radio erupted with voices. Holy Mother of Tors, did you just? That was impossible. Silence on the net, Lieutenant Davis's command cut through the chatter. Then softer, Tower 7. That was one hell of a shot. Maya didn't respond. She was watching the battlefield through her fractured scope, scanning for the next threat. Her finger remained on the trigger guard, ready. But something had changed. The insurgents, who had been regrouping for another push, had witnessed the truck bomb's destruction. She saw them through thermal imaging, their heat signatures hesitating, conferring. They'd thrown everything at FOB Sentinel, 2 assault waves, a vehicle-borne IED, sustained fire for nearly 4 hours. And still the base stood. Still that lone sniper in Tower 7 picked them apart with impossible shots. At 7:34 hours, the thermal signatures began withdrawing. They're retreating, Jackson reported, voice thick with disbelief. All enemy forces pulling back to the east. Maya counted them through her scope. 18 insurgents, maybe 20, dragging their wounded, disappearing into the hills they'd emerged from. The ones who'd survived were abandoning the attack, recognizing the cost had become too high. They'd broken before she had. Maya safetied her rifle and slumped against the tower wall, 5 bullets remaining in her magazine. Her vision swam. The adrenaline that had sustained her through 4 hours of hell was evaporating, leaving only pain and exhaustion. QRF is 10 minutes out, Davis reported. TOR's medical team is coming to your position. Negative, Maya managed. Send them to Henderson's position. He's got wounded. You're wounded too. I'm still standing. They're not priorities, sir. She heard Davis sigh. Understood, hold position. Relief is almost here. Maya pressed her forehead against the cool metal of her rifle, allowing herself one moment of weakness. Her hands shook uncontrollably now. Her arm was on fire. She'd lost enough blood that standing required concentration. But she'd held the line. As the sun climbed higher, burning away the last shadows of the longest night, Maya Torres allowed herself a small smile. The moment of truth had come. And she had answered. Maya didn't remember collapsing. One moment she was watching the desert where the insurgents had retreated, and the next she was staring up at a ceiling that swayed like a ship in rough seas. Bright lights, the smell of antiseptic, voices calling out medical terminology she barely understood. Staff Sergeant Torres, can you hear me? A face appeared above her, Captain Sarah Mendez, the senior trauma surgeon. You're in the medical station. You're safe. Safe, the word seemed foreign. The base, Maya tried to sit up. Pain exploded through her arm and a firm hand pressed her back down. The base is secure. QRF arrived 8 minutes after you passed out. You held long enough. Mendez worked while she talked, cleaning the shrapnel wound on Maya's arm. This needs stitches. You've lost a lot of blood. How long have you been fighting on this injury? Maya's mind was foggy. Since, maybe 400. It's 8:12 now. You fought for 4 hours with a significant laceration and blood loss. Mendez shook her head in what might have been admiration or disbelief. You should have been off that tower 2 hours ago. Couldn't leave, they needed. We know what they needed, we know what you did. Mendez's voice softened. Rest now, that's an order. But rest wouldn't come. Every time Maya closed her eyes, she saw the truck barreling toward the base, saw the faces in her scope, heard the thunder of explosions. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. The morphine they'd given her dulled the physical pain but couldn't touch what was happening in her mind. 2 days passed in a blur of medical checks, debriefings, and enforced rest. Maya learned the full cost of the night's battle. 3 American soldiers killed, 9 wounded, 17 insurgents confirmed dead by her hand alone, with probable kills bringing her total to 42. 42 human beings whose lives she'd ended. The number sat in her stomach like a stone. On the 3rd day, Colonel Brennan visited her bedside. He pulled up a chair, his weathered face showing a mixture of emotions Maya couldn't quite read. Staff Sergeant Torres, he set a tablet on her bed. I need you to watch something. The screen showed drone footage from the battle, timestamp running in the corner. Maya watched herself, a distant figure in Tower 7, systematically engaging targets. The footage showed her impossible ricochet shot, the elimination of the enemy commander, and finally, the moment she stopped the truck bomb. The colonel had slowed the footage at that point. Maya watched her bullet intercept the driver through the window at 275 meters, the truck beginning its fatal swerve. The precision was, she couldn't find words for it. The drone operator who filmed this has 15 years of experience, Brennan said quietly. He told me he's never seen anything like it. The DoD analysts who reviewed the footage said that shot, under those conditions, with damaged equipment while wounded, had less than a 15% probability of success. Maya stared at the frozen image on screen. I didn't calculate probabilities, sir. I just made the shot that needed making." "I know, that's what makes it remarkable." Brennan leaned forward. "I was wrong about you, Tors. We all were. You weren't too valuable for field operations. You were exactly where you needed to be, and we were too blind to see it." "Sir." "Let me finish." His voice carried the weight of command and something else, respect. "I've been in this army for 26 years. I've seen heroism, I've seen incredible feats of arms. But what you did," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "you saved 61 lives that night. The base would have been overrun in the first hour without your overwatch. That truck bomb would have killed everyone in the command center. You held a position that should have required a full squad, and you did it with a fractured scope, a wounded arm, and ammunition you rationed like a miser." Maya didn't know what to say. The praise felt disconnected from her experience of the battle, the fear, the desperation, the certainty that each moment might be her last. "I'm recommending you for the Silver Star," Brennan continued. "The paperwork is already in motion. But more than that, I want you to know that every person on this base understands what you did for them." Over the following weeks, as Maya recovered, the full story of that night spread through the military community. Soldiers she barely knew stopped by to thank her. Henderson visited daily, his arm in a sling, bringing her awful coffee and better conversation. "You know what they're calling you," he said one afternoon. "The Guardian of Tower 7 has a nice ring to it." "I was just doing my job." "Bullshit." Henderson's rare profanity made her look up. "You volunteered for a shift that wasn't yours. You logged observations everyone ignored. You prepared for a threat only you saw coming. Then you fought a 4-hour battle that should have lasted minutes before you were overrun. That's not just doing your job. That's being a damn warrior." The word made her uncomfortable. Warriors were heroes in stories. She was just a soldier who'd been too stubborn to quit. Sergeant First Class Chen visited on his return from the northern offensive. He said nothing at first, just stood by her bed looking at the Purple Heart and commendation letters on her side table. "Finally, now you know." "Know what?" "What you're made of, what you're capable of when everything depends on you." He met her eyes. "I told you, the difference between a good sniper and a legend is what you do when everything falls apart. You found your answer." But the answer came with a price Maya was still calculating. At night, she woke gasping, seeing the truck racing toward her, feeling her finger on the trigger for that impossible shot. The faces of the insurgents she'd killed haunted her, even knowing she'd had no choice. Captain Mendez noticed. "PTSD is normal after what you experienced. We have counselors." "I'm fine." "Tors, you fought the longest sustained sniper engagement in the Afghan theater. You made shots under conditions that shouldn't have been possible, and you killed more people in 4 hours than most soldiers do in entire deployments. You're not fine, and pretending otherwise won't help." Maya knew she was right, but acknowledging the psychological wounds meant confronting what she'd become that night, what the battle had revealed about her capacity for violence, for precision killing, for endurance beyond what should be human. 3 months after the battle, Maya stood in full dress uniform as Colonel Brennan pinned the Silver Star to her chest. The citation read in part, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity in action against an enemy of the United States. Staff Sergeant Tor's extraordinary heroism and selfless devotion to duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service." The words felt like they described someone else, a legend, a hero from a story. Not the scared soldier who'd simply refused to abandon her post. After the ceremony, Maya found herself alone with her medal, staring at the Silver Star in her palm. She'd wanted recognition, wanted to prove she belonged in combat, wanted respect from her peers. She'd gotten all of it. But what she'd really gained was something different, a certainty about herself that no commendation could capture. She knew, with absolute clarity, who she was when tested beyond all reasonable limits. She was someone who held the line. And that knowledge, terrible and empowering in equal measure, would stay with her forever. 6 months after the battle, Staff Sergeant Maya Torres stood in a very different tower, this one at Fort Benning, Georgia, overlooking a pristine training range where new recruits practiced long-distance marksmanship. The Georgia sun was gentler than the Afghan furnace, and the only explosions came from controlled demolition exercises miles away. "Breathe. Let the shot come to you," Maya instructed, watching a young private, couldn't be more than 20, struggle with her breathing rhythm. "Don't force it. The rifle knows when you're tense." The private, Emma Kowalski, nodded and tried again. This time the shot cracked true, punching through the target at 600 meters. "Better," Maya said, "but you're still rushing the follow-through. The shot doesn't end when you pull the trigger. It ends when the bullet impacts. Stay in the scope, watch the hit, then assess." She'd been assigned to the Army Marksmanship Unit as a senior instructor 3 months ago. The position was prestigious, sought after, a clear recognition of her expertise, but Maya had accepted it for different reasons. 5 women stood on the range that morning, among 20 total recruits in the advanced sniper course. When Maya had gone through this training, she'd been one of 2 women in her class. The other had washed out after week 3, leaving Maya to endure alone the doubts, the subtle dismissals, the assumption that she'd gotten there through lowered standards rather than merit. She'd sworn then that if she ever had the chance, she'd make the path easier for those who followed. "Instructor Torres," Private Kowalski approached after the range session ended, "can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Some of the guys in the class, they say women don't have the upper body strength for sustained operations, that we're fine for range shooting but can't handle the physical demands of real deployment." The private's jaw was set, but Maya heard the uncertainty beneath. "Is that true?" Maya was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "In Afghanistan, I held a guard tower position for 4 hours under sustained enemy assault. I fired 193 rounds with a rifle that weighs 17 pounds, through a fractured scope, with a shrapnel wound in my shooting arm. I made shots at ranges up to 800 meters while the tower shook from explosions. And when the moment came that everything depended on one impossible shot, I made it." She met Kowalski's eyes directly. "Your body will do what your mind demands of it if you train it properly and refuse to accept limitations other people try to place on you. The only question that matters is this: when the moment comes, will you hold the line?" Kowalski straightened. "Yes, instructor." "Then prove it tomorrow on the range. Show them what you're capable of." After the recruits dispersed, Maya sat in her office reviewing training scores. Letters covered one corner of her desk, correspondence from the soldiers she'd saved that night. Private Jackson had made sergeant and was now stationed in Germany, still working communications but with a newfound confidence. Corporal Henderson had recovered from his wounds and sent updates every few weeks, usually accompanied by terrible jokes. Lieutenant Davis had written the most surprising letter. In it, he'd apologized for dismissing her warnings, acknowledged his failure to recognize the threat, and most importantly, had become an outspoken advocate for qualified women receiving combat opportunities without prejudice. He'd cited her case in 3 different training seminars for junior officers. Even Colonel Brennan wrote periodically, keeping her informed about changes at FOB Sentinel. The base had been reinforced, security protocols revised, and he'd noted with what Maya imagined was a wry smile. Guard duty was now recognized as a critical position requiring top-tier personnel. But the letter that meant the most sat in a frame on her desk. It was from Sergeant First Class Chen, written in his characteristically sparse style. "Torres, you asked me once what separates legends from good soldiers. You have your answer now, but here's what I didn't tell you. The hardest part isn't becoming a legend, it's living with what that required of you. Use it, turn those 4 hours into something that lasts beyond citations and ceremony. Make them count for the next generation." You know the way now, show them. Maya read it at least once a week, drawing strength from the simple directive, make it count. 3 weeks later, Maya received orders for temporary duty, a brief return to Afghanistan for a training assessment mission. The itinerary included Fob Sentinel. She almost requested a schedule change, almost. But she'd learned something during those dark months of recovery, working through nightmares and survivor's guilt with the patient help of counselors. You couldn't heal from what you refused to face. Tower 7 stood exactly as she remembered it, bullet scars still pocking the metal framework, the platform where she'd bled and fought and refused to break. Someone had mounted a small plaque, Tower 7, defended by SSGM Tours, April 2025. Maya climbed the ladder slowly, each rung familiar beneath her hands. At the top, she stood where she'd stood that night, looking out over terrain she'd memorized through 8 months of monotonous guard duty. The desert was quiet, peaceful even. It was hard to imagine the hell that had erupted here. I wondered if you'd come back. Maya turned to find a new base commander, Colonel Patricia Reeves, climbing up to join her. Wanted to see it one more time, ma'am. Reeves nodded, looking out over the same view. I read the after-action reports, all of them. The tactical analysis, the drone footage, the witness statements. You know what struck me most? Ma'am, you'd logged 17 separate observations in the 3 days before the attack. Detailed, thorough, exactly the kind of intelligence work we train soldiers to do, and everyone dismissed it. Reeves's voice carried an edge. We almost lost this base because qualified warnings were ignored. That doesn't happen anymore. Not here. Every observation gets taken seriously now, regardless of who makes it. That's good, ma'am. It's because of you. You changed how we think about defense, about vigilance, about the value of every soldier's contribution. Reeves paused. The Army's better for what you did here. Not just the battle, the preparation, the persistence, the refusal to be dismissed. After the colonel left, Maya stood alone in the tower as sunset painted the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. She placed her hand on the support beam, where she'd braced her wounded arm for that final, impossible shot. She'd been just a guard post sniper, overlooked and underestimated, relegated to a position others saw as secondary. But that position had been exactly where she needed to be when the moment of truth arrived. And the truth was this: warriors weren't defined by the assignments they received or the recognition they earned. They were defined by what they did when everything depended on them, when retreat was easier than standing firm, when giving up was more rational than holding on. Maya had found her answer in 4 hours of hell. She discovered she was someone who held the line, no matter the cost. Now, as an instructor, she had a new mission, helping the next generation discover the same about themselves, teaching them that patience was a weapon, that preparation mattered, that every position had purpose when filled with dedication and skill. As darkness fell, Maya descended from Tower 7 for the last time. She didn't need to return again. The ghosts had quieted. The nightmares had faded to manageable memories. The psychological wounds were healing, slowly but steadily. She'd been only a guard post sniper, until the moment of truth arrived and revealed what she'd been all along. A guardian, a warrior, a legend. But more importantly, someone who would ensure that the soldiers who came after her never had to fight as alone as she had. Someone who would listen to their warnings, validate their observations, and give them the opportunities to prove themselves before crisis demanded it. Walking away from Tower 7, Maya Tours carried no regrets, only purpose. The battle had ended 6 months ago. But her war, the one to make the Army better, more inclusive, more prepared, was just beginning. And this time, she had an entire generation of warriors ready to stand with her.